When it comes to the fight against insurance companies, large corporations, and the healthcare industry, injured victims are always the underdog. But that doesn't worry us. At Messa & Associates, we're an injury law firm from Philadelphia, and we come to fight. Our clients know that they've got representation with a chip on its shoulder, and it's the same chip that makes Philly the toughest city in the country. Call 215-568-3500 or visit us online at messalaw.com. Messa & Associates, the toughest injury firm in Philadelphia.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome to a Saturday edition of Football 24/7. I'm your guy, Tone DeShields II, and I'm joined by our Eagles insider, John McMullen. Make sure you guys smash that like button. Make sure you guys remain engaged in the content. And most notably, make sure you guys are subscribed to the JAKIB Sports YouTube channel. If you guys don't already know or haven't realized it, we're live right now. This isn't a premiere. Me and John are live right now, taking time out of our very busy Saturdays. But we're here with you guys because we care and because we love football. And we want to talk about your Philadelphia Eagles and this Dolphins matchup. And, you know, we talked about the offense earlier in the week. We talked about the defensive matchups yesterday, but we haven't really gotten too deep into the coaching matchup. So, John, first, how are you, my friend?
Doing well. Getting ready for Julio Jones' debut. Officially,
the Julio Jones Bowl.
Yeah. Officially elevated from the practice squad. So,
okay.
Yeah. Do we ever sleep? We got to I don't know. Do we? I don't think so, Tom.
Yeah, I doubt it, man. It's the life we lead. It's the business we're in. So, you know, let's get into the coaching matchup, man. Mike McDaniel, Nick Sirianni, Brian Johnson, Sean Desai, Vic Fangio, man. I'm not exactly sure who's the OC over there in Miami. He doesn't get talked about enough.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't really matter, right?
Does not matter. Yeah, Mike McDaniel's the guy, and that kind of you know, he's kind of the flavor of the month in the NFL scheme wise. By the way, Frank Smith is the offensive coordinator.
Frank Smith.
Yeah. And by the way, nondescript name.
Exactly. Like John Smith.
Yeah, exactly. Because Mike McDaniel's the guy. And look, I mean, that's one of the most interesting things about this matchup is, and it tells you one thing. There's a lot of ways to do things in the NFL. Number one offense in the league is Miami through 6 games. We all know that. Number two is the Eagles, for Eagles fans, believe it or not, because they seem to think the offense has been bad. They're number 2 in the NFL. Miami's the number 1 team when it comes to motion, both pre-snap and in general, just at any point. The Eagles are 31st in motion at the snap and 32nd overall. So dead last in the league. So it tells you you can do things a lot of ways. The Eagles play, the reason for that is the Eagles play a lot of tempo. They play a lot of empty sets, and you're kind of defeating the purpose when you do a lot of motion, especially with tempo. I mean, doesn't make any sense. You're giving the whole point of it is, if you think back to the days of Chip Kelly, is to get the defense on their heels. If you start, you know, hesitating by using motion, you're kind of defeating the purpose. So, but yeah, Mike is the guy right now. And I think the Eagles look at that and they say, really? Why is that? Nick Sirianni's record since that 2-5 start is unbelievable.
Pretty damn good, right?
Yeah. So, and obviously they're coming off a disappointing loss. So I think there's something to prove we're talking about coaches. I think there's something to prove. And I think the Eagles coaches want to prove something against that flavor of the month, so to speak.
I think about that Miami Dolphins offense, and right, they lead the league in motion. But is that what makes their offense so dangerous? I mean, I know we talk about the pieces, right, the personnel, but what is it about their scheme? What is it about anything that you've seen on paper that makes their offense so complex and maybe so hard to defend?
I don't know if it's complex. I think, Sean McVay said it best. Who was the offensive lineman who first told me? I think it was Jamon Brown, who was here for a very short period of time. Sean called it he calls it the illusion of complexity. So you're trying to make it look complex, but it isn't complex necessarily on your side of the football. And I think, whether that's the case or not, the complexity of it, the goal of most coaches is to make things simple enough to where the players can play fast without thinking a lot. So I don't know if complexity is necessarily the goal. But what you're trying to do with motion is test the discipline of the defense. They do that, and if you're not disciplined, it can look ugly at times. And that's, if you go back to the Super Bowl, that's what happened. There's nothing much complex the Chiefs did in the two plays that everybody has a big issue with. But the Eagles secondary didn't communicate well, and they blew coverages. And it looks bad to the point, the second touchdown the Chiefs ran, you can watch, Patrick Mahomes was mic'd up. They didn't even run the right play. They were in the wrong formation. And Patrick Mahomes deserves credit for, getting something out of nothing, directing traffic, so to speak. But they ran the wrong. They didn't run the right play that they wanted to run, and it still worked to the point because the Eagles secondary didn't communicate well. So, it's that. But the design of it is to test the discipline of the defense, and that's why I think we're going to see more zone than we typically see, and the Eagles play a lot of zone because that makes it easier. But if your eyes start going in the wrong direction and you start biting, it can get ugly against teams that use a lot of motion. And it helps to have Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, right. It helps to have Tyreek Hill, helps to have Jalen Waddle on those guys, those speedsters for sure. So I would, we've spoken a lot about discipline these past couple minutes and the illusion of complexity and how you have to, not allow your eyes to put tricks on you, so to speak. How would you evaluate or rate the Philadelphia Eagles defense's discipline over the past several weeks? Now, obviously, different opponents require different things out of you. Every game has a complexion or has a personality to it. But just based off, you always have the eye in the sky view. You're always in the press box, and you pretty much get to see everything, pretty clearly. How would you grade or evaluate the Philadelphia Eagles' discipline on the defensive side of the ball?
Typically, it's pretty good. They have a pretty good team, and that's what was so disappointing in the Super Bowl is the fact that, I often talk about this Vic Fangio scheme that so many teams run, and obviously, you're going to see Vic live and in person, actually coordinating a defense, not sort of the second were third generation that you typically get to see from other people running it, like the Eagles.
Right.
You're going to see live and in color of what, he does. But
we're going to see patient zero.
Yeah. It's very, and that's to be honest, that's my biggest problem with it. It's very communication based in the back seven. So because you have so many zone coverages and so many different zone coverages, and you're spinning off to different coverages, one guy doesn't do what he's supposed to do, and you have what you have in the Super Bowl. And that's what was so disappointing, because of all the teams that ran the Fangio defense, the Eagles were the best at it last year, until the second half of the last game on the biggest stage. And that's why it was so disappointing. And it should have been. But and obviously a lot of people want to blame it on the old defensive coordinator because they didn't like him. And that's fine. But it's always player related. And I was talking to one of the Eagles coaches, talking about it from an offensive perspective, because as we said, it's rarely this extreme where you have number 1 against number 32 when it comes to motion. So everybody thinks Miami's got the complex offense because they run so much motion. But the bottom line is you have number 1 versus number 32, and you have the first ranked offense against the second ranked offense. So it proves, basically players are more important than coaches. Miami's successful because they have
the personnel
and Jalen Waddle. And right. I had Tua is a good quarterback. I don't think he's a great quarterback, but he's a good quarterback. He's an accurate quarterback. So when you have receivers who are open, and it really summons up. You saw what A.J. Brown did for the Eagles offense. The Eagles offense was good in 2021, but there was something missing.
Right.
And then the final piece to the puzzle came with A.J. Brown. That's what Tyreek is for the Dolphins. And even to a greater extent, because can't say enough good things about Tyreek Hill as a player. You could say some bad things in other issues, but as a player, you can't say enough good things about the guy. He's unbelievable. I've never seen a speed guy. Usually speed guys are they're not great speed route runners.
Yeah.
Or they don't have great hands and they drop the football. He's unbelievable at everything. Or even Randy Moss, who's, I got to cover best receiver I've ever covered, obviously. Hall of Fame player, greatest deep threat. Even he wasn't as well-rounded as Tyreek Hill, because Tyreek's better at the underneath stuff than Randy was. Randy had the size advantage.
The speed advantage.
I don't know if he had the speed advantage, but if you're 6'4", 220, and you
those
don't
strides
know,
are going to be pretty right.
Yeah. That's the thing about Randy. So you see Randy out there is like a big praying mantis, and he's just running by it like he's Tyreek. Like you expect Tyreek Hill to be fast. Not as fast as he is. I was talking to Devin Allen this week, who's obviously an Olympic level speedster. And Devin's probably faster, but it's crazy what all the other stuff with the speed that Tyreek Hill possesses. It's I hate the term generational player, but he's a generational player.
Yeah, you got to give it to him. That combination of speed, route running ability, being able to catch the ball at the high point of physicality. He plays with still. He's a stocky, fast guy. He's a lightning bolt out there, man. He's kind of built like a pit bull, with cheetah speed. It's crazy.
And if you go back to his last season in Kansas City, this is where this all started. about playing in the parking lot. That's what people did to Kansas City because of their impact and Tyreek Hill's impact. And as good as Patrick Mahomes is, it had more to do with Tyreek than Patrick. They were trying to limit the big play, and they did. And if you remember, first couple games that year, Patrick Mahomes, that's as close as he's came to struggling over a significant period of time. Was like, all right, what are people doing? They're trying to force me to throw it underneath. And he wasn't comfortable with that. He wanted the big play because he was used to it. And eventually figured it out. But yeah, he's tough. He's tough to deal with. And it's kind of like Michael Jordan in his prime. I always say, he's going to score 30, but make him work for it. Same thing with Tyreek Hill. He's going to get his, but make him work for it is the best you can hope for.
Okay, I want to jump over to the offensive side of the ball for the Philadelphia Eagles. You said something about Patrick Mahomes that really stood out to me. The fact that he was really enamored with the big plays and the explosive part of the offense. He was kind of uncomfortable settling for the underneath stuff, right? And that comes with developing as a quarterback, being able to take what the defense gives you, and being able to operate on all three levels: the underneath, and the intermediate, and the explosive deep ball, right? What have you seen from Jalen Hurts over the past couple seasons, most notably probably over the past several games? What have you seen from Jalen Hurts? Because we've seen him develop little by little every single year. He made his biggest leap from 2021 to 2022, of course. 2023, he's having some growing pains right now. What do you think it is about Jalen Hurts' game right now that he is more comfortable doing, and defenses are taking that away, and now he's forced to do something else that's making him uncomfortable? What is it about his game right now that's uncomfortable and comfortable for him, and where he potentially has to take that next step in his development? Kind of similar to what you said about Patrick Mahomes.
I think Jalen he's a different type of quarterback. So I think,
of course,
it's sort of like how people want to grade him or rate him, whatever you think a quarterback is. Like there were people last year when he was runner up for MVP, and deservedly so, who would, point out that he only has 22 touchdown passes. Right. Well, if that's what you want, you probably don't want Jalen Hurts to be your quarterback. If you want 35 touchdown passes, all right, go get somebody else. So I think it has more to do with, people judging Jalen. I kind of look, and I wrote about it before the season when we got to talk to Jalen on sort of a more of a wide ranging basis. He's, his greatness is, and I said intangible greatness, and people want a number. I talk about it all the time. We talk about it too much. People want a number. Point the number. He's a little bit different. He was 14-1 as a starter last year. Is 5, and that's pretty good. 19-2, whatever. He was at 21 of 22 before he lost, or maybe it was 22 of 23. He does things like the Eagles have the best third down defense. That's all Jalen Hurts, third down offense. Sorry, number 1 in the NFL. They're over 60-something% since week 5.
Right.
It's absurd. He sort of, you might have an ugly play, and you're feeling good about yourself as a defense. It's 3rd and 13.
Did
he
break your
finds
back?
a way to convert, and that just is devastating for a defense. You do everything the right way, and all of a sudden it might be off schedule, it might be on schedule, it might be a run, it might be a pass.
Yeah.
And that's why it was disappointing. Where, look, the interception against the Jets was very uncharacteristic and not acceptable and all that kind of stuff. I would say that's where he's got to improve the most, understanding, and that's every quarterback. And he's still, I think people forget, he's still a young quarterback. again, it's not the worst thing in the world to punt that football. You're going to win the game if you punt that football. I'm very confident in that. They were going to win that game if they punted the football.
I agree.
He's got to understand that. But competitors are competitors, and they're always trying to make a play. And he probably should have ate the football or ran it, or again, lived to play another down. Would be, if you pin me down, say, what does he have to improve on most? Every play doesn't have to be a success. Sometimes, and he's gotten better at that. But he's still,
I thought
he's
that was a
still gotta
strength
work
last
on it.
year. I thought that was a strength a little bit.
Yeah,
for
well,
example-
that's what I mean. He's gotten better, but there's still room as that
Right, of
play
course, right.
improved. But there's always Tom Brady. Yeah, there's always room to improve, and that's why he talks about the standard. The standard is perfection. Well, you can never reach the standard. That's why you can't reach perfection, but he can get better. He can learn from that play and say, all right, next time we're going to punt the football and, make Zach Wilson beat us. And again, it's such a nebulous thing. I said, if Aaron Rodgers' tone was healthy and on the other side, I wouldn't say that. I would say, go try to make a play, go try to win the game. Because if he gets the football back and only needs a field goal, you're probably going to lose. But with Zach, well, I think maybe that's a better way of describing. You have to understand situations at all times. And that's easier said than done. Like if the same situation happened against Miami, you probably want to go make a play, because if they get it back and they only need a field goal and you're down 2 safeties, they're probably, you're probably in trouble.
Okay. So final question before we get out of here, John. We talked about the Mike McDaniel offense versus the Sean Desai Eagles defense, and how it's extremely communication based, and it's off the Vic Fangio tree, right? Let's talk about the Nick Sirianni and Brian Johnson offense versus the Vic Fangio patient zero defense. Their original. The Eagles have practiced against something like this all the time because they run a similar defense, right? So, what's your thoughts on the coaching matchup between Sirianni and Brian Johnson and Vic Fangio? Are there things that this Vic Fangio defense, are there things in that defense that the Philadelphia Eagles are, I guess, naturally built to exploit because they practice against it essentially every day?
Yeah, I asked Nick that question this week, and he kind of joked about it. He said, we didn't, Vic was giving us information. We didn't necessarily give him information, but look, everybody knows this defense. Everybody. That's part of my problem with it, is when it's happened in the past, whether it's Tony Dungy, everybody copied him, whether it's, Pete Carroll, everybody copied him. To a certain extent, Mike Zimmer, everybody copied him for a while with the A-gap stuff. And now we are with Vic, and everybody's copying him. And there's always a tipping point, and offenses figure out what they're doing and exploit it. And I think we're getting to that point with the Vic Fangio defense. And people are too familiar with it. But, I also think the quarterback play has taken a deep dive this year from an NFL perspective. So maybe it's got a little bit longer of a shelf life. Fans are never going to like it because it's so it's certainly in Philadelphia, because it's so zone heavy and so zone based. So I don't know. But the Eagles are well versed in it. It comes down to execution. I mean, I always say, look, coaching is more important. If you're a sports fan, everybody's gearing up for the Phillies. If you're a 4-for-4 fan, yes, coaching is most important in football versus baseball,
other sports.
basketball, hockey. No question about it. But the bottom line is, if you don't have, and Nick, to his credit, says this all the time, show me a good coach, I'll show you a bunch of good players. It's always the players, first and foremost. You know, is Tyreek Hill going to go off for 200? You're in trouble. Is Jalen Carter going to get 3 sacks? Miami's in trouble. You know, execution first and foremost. And the Eagles are very competent in their offensive line against this defensive front, and they should be with Lane Johnson. Lane's going to play. So, you know, can they take advantage of their advantageous matchups? Or, you know, the Eagles are going to play Terrell Edmonds and Sidney Brown. Mekhi Gardner's elevated. He's probably going to be your third safety.
With so many new guys, though, that can influence the communication and the execution on defense, right?
Yeah. And especially at safety, because, you know, safeties are the one who sort of control the communication on in the secondary. So even though Slay and Bradbury are veterans, and who knows, Josiah Scott might get the slot work. Yeah, they're in trouble. So can Miami take advantage of that, or can the Eagles take advantage of their matchup, which would be the pass rush against the offensive line? So, you know, kind of, if Miami wins the game, you're probably going to be saying, we're going to be talking next week and saying the Eagles didn't take advantage of their offensive line. If the Eagles win the game, you're probably going to be saying, ooh, Jalen Carter whipped some people. Josh Sweat did some nice things. Fletcher, Hassan Reddick, maybe a forced fumble, that kind of stuff. Similarly, on offense, you're going to be talking about the Eagles' offensive line if they win the game. If they don't win the game, you're probably saying, wow, Miami did a nice job and held up well, better than we expected. It's always about the players. Always
About the players, John. And I appreciate you, man. You always make it about me when it comes to football 24/7. You always make yourself available, man. I appreciate you as always. Eagles fans, thank you guys for always locking in on the content as well. The content is nothing without you guys. Without you guys, we kind of really don't have a job. So as long as you guys continue to read John's work, as long as you guys continue to watch the content, we'll always stay busy for you guys. So make sure you smash that like button. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the JAKIB Sports YouTube channel. You guys, this is it. Tomorrow's the big day. We're about 27 hours away, about 25, 27 hours away from the big game. So, yeah, me and John are going to be working overtime this week in the late game. But most notably, John, man, he's going to be stuck in traffic. He's going to have to deal with a lot of different existential circumstances outside of his control. So, I appreciate John as always, man. As always, you guys have been locked in on football 24/7. If you want more from John, by the way, check him out Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Eastern time on Burridge 365 with his partner in crime, Jody Mack. And also check him out tomorrow on the pre-halftime and post-game show, Piling Hockey, Malamut Law. A lot of sponsors are involved. Ocean Casino at the gallery. A lot of content is going to be on the way for you guys tomorrow. So make sure you guys lock in. John's going to give you guys all the amazing insight, all the information you could potentially need to prep you for this game. Is going to give you the best recap when it comes to the Philadelphia Eagles as well. He's the best in the game, one of the best doing it. So make sure you guys lock in. Once again, you guys have been locked in on football 24/7 with John McMullen. I'm your guy, Tone DeShields II, and we'll see you guys next time. Fly Eagles fly.
When it comes to the fight against insurance companies, large corporations, and the healthcare industry, injured victims are always the underdog. But that doesn't worry us. At Mess & Associates, we're an injury law firm from Philadelphia, and we come to fight. Our clients know that they've got representation with a chip on its shoulder, and it's the same chip that makes Philly the toughest city in the country. Call 215-568-3500 or visit us online at messalaw.com. Mess & Associates.